Hey there, lovely listeners. Welcome to Uniquely Wired Podcast. I'm your host, Nani. On this podcast, we uncover the beauty and nature of autism through heartfelt conversations. Let's jump in. What's up, podcast fam? Welcome back to another episode of the Uniquely Wired Podcast. I'm your host, Nani, and if you're new here, I want to welcome you. Thank you for being here. Don't forget to download the podcast if you enjoyed today's episode. I am so excited, you guys. Today, I have a very special guest, my very beautiful sister, all the way from the state of Florida. I am so excited to have her here joining us on this episode that's going to be amazing. And we're going to talk about autism, of course, because you guys know that is one of my main focus on this podcast. And she's going to share a little bit about herself and a little bit about her story. And then we're going to get right into these questions that I have for her, which I'm very excited. So, Ruthie, please go ahead and introduce yourself for us.
Hi, everyone. Thank you, Nani, for that beautiful introduction. I'm like blushing. I'm trying not to blush. My name is Ruthie Del Valle Rosado. I am a wife. I'm a mom of 3 beautiful kids. Victoria, who's 19, Isaac, who is 12, and Isaiah, who is 6 years old. I'm also a Bible study teacher, and I have a little series on Instagram called Healing and Restoration, which is on hold at this moment. But that was created because I was going through a moment of healing and being restored through the Lord. And it was a series where I was able to listen to other people's testimonies. What else? My son, my 6-year-old son, just recently got diagnosed. Which we'll talk about more about that later on. I'm originally from New York City, and I am currently living in Florida. So I guess that's it about me.
Yes, I love it. I love it, you guys. And of course, you already know I'm going to leave her information down below. If you feel led after this episode to give her a follow and just stay connected with her and you feel connected with her story, because I'm sure there's going to be listeners that are going in some way to connect with Ruthie and her story. Um, it's an impacting story, and I truly believe you're in for a treat with this episode. So, and if you're wondering, the topic for this episode is trusting God through the autism journey. And y'all already know, okay, when y'all see me with my phone, don't be assuming I'm like distracted, okay? I am looking at my notes, just saying. Um, so, yeah, trusting God through the autism journey. So, obviously, Ruthie is a woman of God. She is a Christian. She's a born again believer like myself. And so that's something we connected on. Actually, when I first met Ruthie, that was like the one thing we connected on, just our trust in God and our faith and how out there we were with our faith, and we connected. And it's just amazing how many years it's been. I think, was it around the pandemic that we followed each other? Were we already following each other after I had Jacob?
Yes.
Okay. So yeah, then 2020, crazy. Like how much like COVID brought people together that you would have never known. I think I have followed you because somebody has shared your page and you were doing like your fashion videos. I still remember. And then you started selling. You had a little boutique, and I was like, yes, I'm here for it. So it's just wild, you guys. So Ruthie is literally like a friend, like someone that I consider my sister, my friend. Like, and she knows this. And even if we don't talk every day, we could go months without texting each other, and like we'll just follow up with each other. We see each other's live on Instagram anyways, 9 times out of 10. But even still, like she always checks in on me and just make sure I'm good, and I do the same thing. And it's a good friendship, and I'm just grateful. Okay, so let's get into this because y'all know I could talk forever. And plus, I love to talk, but it's not my time today, okay? I need to give her time. So, Fruity, can you share a moment in your autism journey where you felt overwhelmed, and how did trusting God help you navigate through that overwhelm?
Okay. A moment where I felt overwhelmed in my son's autism journey. So I want to start by saying that he was recently diagnosed this year in January. So before that, I'm originally from New York, but we moved to Puerto Rico during the pandemic because things were they were a little bit overwhelming in New York. And while we were in Puerto Rico, there were family members telling us, hey, do you think he has autism? And we were in denial. We were in complete denial. All the signs were there. He was nonverbal. He was having a lot of meltdowns. He was refusing food. He was regressing. All the signs were there. But then the Lord opened doors for us to move to Florida. But before I moved to Florida, I decided that I wanted to visit my family in New York City, because I hadn't seen my siblings for almost 3 years since I had moved to Puerto Rico. So I told my husband, I need to go to New York. I just felt like this urge. I had to go to New York. And I went for 3 weeks, and I told my husband to like take care of like closing out the house, everything that needed to be taken care of, selling furniture and all that stuff. Went to New York City, stayed at my sister's house. And while I was there, I was feeling like this overwhelming, like I felt overwhelmed, just a lot of overwhelmed. I felt that God was stripping me of everything, of every ideology, of every concept that I had of him at that moment. Because while we were in Puerto Rico, God began to strip. He began to strip things, ministry, titles, things that I thought I knew about him, finances, just everything that I was holding on to, he began to strip. And so while I was in New York, he began to strip away the, I'm going to say the blindfold that I had, the religious blindfold that I had of for my son. I was like, no, he doesn't have it. So God began to strip that, like literally strip it away. And so while I was there, I was really overwhelmed because everything that I thought that I knew about God and about my life and how things were supposed to go was being stripped away. And I was just left with nothing but the truth. And it was right in front of me. And that to me was like really powerful, but it was overwhelming. So I told my mom, I said, Mom, I need to get my hair done because I was just tired. I wanted something new. I felt like everything was being stripped away. So I just needed something new. And we went to her hair salon, and the lady who does her hair usually dyes hair. And I told her, I said, hey, I want my hair done. And she looked at me and she was like, no, I'm not doing your hair. I'm not touching your hair. Just like that. And I was like, what? And my mom was like shocked. She was like, she's usually such a sweet, nice lady, and she does everybody's hair, blah, blah. And I wanted to cry, but I didn't cry. But I was like beginning to feel like overwhelmed. And my mom was like, well, we can check another place. And this was in Riverdale, in an area I didn't know. I'm not used to this area. I don't know where I'm at. I don't know the hair salons. I haven't been to a hair salon. I hadn't been in New York. All these things. My mom's like, let's just try it around the corner. I feel like there's another shop. I went into that hair salon. Immediately I went in with my son, Isaiah. Isaiah was in the stroller. And they said yes to me. They said yes, we'll do your hair. And my mom was like, okay, I'm going to leave you here and I'm going to go to my lady down the block. Okay. Because I still need her to do my hair. And I was like, okay, fine. And by then I was like starting to get nervous and I didn't know why. And I was listening to Christian music over the speakers of the hair salon. And there were 3 women there and they were there ready to service me. And as they were like checking my hair and parting it to dye it and all that stuff, my son was right next to me. There was no one else in the salon. It was a nice small salon. There was no blower going on. It was just Christian music in the background. He begins to cry and have a meltdown because they're touching me and he doesn't know where he's at and everything is new. And I just began to cry because I was like, I'm so sorry. I don't know what else to do. I don't know how to calm him down. And I really want to get my hair done, but I'm sorry if I'm being selfish. And I'm like, I feel so overwhelmed. And I think he has autism, but I don't know because I've been in denial and I'm sorry I've been in denial. And like everything just happened. And those ladies, they just wrapped me in their arms. They hugged me and I was bawling my eyes out, crying on these 3 women that I had no idea who they were. They were like, don't you worry about it. They created a corner for him where he could play with the roller sets and line them up because that's what he wanted to do. They put cartoons for him. They set up a safe environment for him. And they just began to pour life into me. They began praying over me. They began telling me their stories. Each and every one of them, it just so happened, Nani, this was mad random, that all 3 of them were special needs mom. Every single one of them were special needs mom. So they were like, there's nothing to be ashamed of. God created him fearfully and wonderfully. It was just like such a beautiful moment. And I could not stop crying. And the love that I felt from these women was just absolutely incredible. And it was just like, it made me understand that there's a different a level of like compassion and love and community within special needs moms. There's like this understanding, like, you don't gotta explain, like, we're not here to judge you. We know, we get you, like, we understand you. And that was like incredible. That was absolutely incredible. I was overwhelmed. Like, I can't even describe. I felt like I was suffocating, and everything was released in that moment, and it just made me feel safe. So that was on a Saturday. I'm almost done with this story, I promise you. On Sunday morning, I wake up and I'm like, okay, I can't deny anymore that my son has autism. I know that he does. I got to get him diagnosed. But then that's where the religious part and the enemy started saying, maybe your son is demonized. Maybe, maybe you sinned and God is punishing you. Okay, that was the other part of it. And I was like, oh my God, did I not rebuke? Do I need to rebuke him? What kind of prayers do I need to make so that my son could be set free? Maybe this is all my fault. Lord, let me think back. What doors did I open for this to happen? I'm sorry. Please forgive me. And in that very moment, Nani, like, I'm telling you, my trip to New York City was like divine. There was a light. It was still like early in the morning, like 6:30 in the morning, and my son was up. We were both just sitting on the bed. This sunlight came in through the window, and I heard an audible voice that said, look at your son's eyes. And I looked at him, and I saw the purity, the light of God in him. And he said, how dare you? How dare you say that your son is possessed? How dare you think that I created him because you sinned? I created him this way because you sinned. How dare you? And I was like, I'm so sorry, God. He was like, he is mine. And he is fearfully and wonderfully made. How dare you think that I cannot use your son exactly how he is? How dare you think this is a punishment? And I was like, I just started crying because as I was looking at my son, I felt like I was looking at an angel of God. I almost like the face of God. His face was lit up. It was something so divine, so beautiful. And I felt embarrassed. I'm sorry, I almost spoke in Spanish. I felt ashamed. I felt embarrassed. I did. I felt ashamed. I felt ashamed because I had all these religious concepts and ideologies. And at that moment, like I said, God was stripping me. He stripped that away from me. And he said, how dare you? How dare you? Because sometimes our vision of God, of who we think God is, blocks us or prevents us from seeing who he really is. And my vision of who I thought God was blocking me from seeing who my son really was, God's creation. So that was my little
My
testimony.
God. Oh my God. Girl, you got me ready to run. You got me ready to run. Because let's revisit back when you went to that salon that your mom suggested, right? And they straight up rejected you. Like, there was no ifs or buts. Like, they straight up rejected you. And it reminds me of that saying that's very popular, God's rejection. I mean, people's rejection, right? It's God's redirection. And so God literally used that rejection, right? And he turned it for your good, which is what his word says, right? Everything that the enemy meant for evil, he turns it for good. So the fact that you were redirected to a better place and you were the only one there, I mean, at such a time on a Saturday. What? Okay, on a Saturday. Can we just remember that? Usually the salons are crazy. I know I schedule my hair appointments for Saturdays. So I know that, like, look, it be packed. So wow. That part right there is just mind-blowing. And of course, I knew part of the story, but oh my gosh, like, I'm still like, obviously I have forgotten. So now when you're saying it again, I'm just like, wow, this is like wild. Just how God works. in mysterious ways. And you could have sat there and like went back and forth with this lady. Like, what you mean? Like, do you not like my hair texture? Do you not like me as a person? Like, I'm confused, and just went back and forth, back and forth. But you decided to say, okay, cool. As hurt as it could have been for you, or frustrating, because I'm sure it was all type of emotions, because you're dealing with so much, right? You have so much overwhelmness, to now be like, God, I really need to trust you in this. Like, what is going on? It just all came together. And like now you can share this. Oh my gosh. And I'm sure I could say that's beautiful now, but in the moment it's messy. It's wild. So um thank you for sharing that. That is so powerful. I'm like, how do you move on from this? Like, what? Okay, so can you share with us, how has your faith influenced your perspective on your child's unique needs and development?
Okay. Say that again. Say it one more.
Yes. How has your faith influenced your perspective on your child's unique needs and development?
Okay. So,
So, how has it changed your perspective, really? Because we have one perspective as humans, and obviously, when we receive this diagnosis, and this is a good question for you because it's so recent, right?
mhm.
It's going on a year. Um, but it's still so recent. So, can you just share a little bit about that?
Yeah. So my faith has definitely impacted me tremendously. Like I said, one of the things that God did was He stripped me from my vision of who I thought God was, because it was blocking me from seeing God. And throughout this entire year, what the Lord has been saying to me is, suffering is not meant to kill you, but to bring you closer to me, to bring you deeper into me. So a lot of people see suffering as a punishment, but it hasn't been. And the Lord has been showing me that. And that I know that for a lot of us autism moms, that's hard, especially when we're in the moment when our child is having a meltdown, or they're not sleeping through the night, or they're having behavioral issues. But my faith has kept me, has literally had me holding on to God. And I remember at one point when I was literally crying in my kitchen because it was over 2 weeks of my son not sleeping, nothing through the night. I was utterly exhausted. He had already been diagnosed, but he was having a lot of meltdowns and behavioral issues. And I didn't know what to do. I was a baby. And I think I had texted you during that time. But I was like, God, I need you. I need you right now. I don't know what to do. And it reminds me of the Bible verse that says, I called on the Lord in my distress, and the Lord answered me. And like a few hours later, the Lord um, allowed for me to receive a phone call saying that, hey, your child is no longer in the waiting list. He's been approved for ABA therapy. And then a few weeks later, they were like, hey, your child has been accepted into this special needs charter school. And things started lining up. And so my faith has helped me and guided me through all of this. Because honestly, without God, I don't know if I would have been able to get through this. I'm going to be honest. I would not have been able to get through this. And a Bible verse that the Lord kept reminding me of, especially when my son, was having meltdowns, or when he was frustrated trying to communicate something with me and I didn't understand him, was this Bible verse in 1 Corinthians 1:27, which I'm pretty sure you're very much aware of. And I'm sorry for those who are not Christian. I'm going to try to make this as simple as possible. And it says, but God has chosen the foolish things of the world to put to shame the wise. And God has chosen the weak things of the world to put to shame the things that are mighty. So he kept reminding me of that, because a lot of people see children with autism as weak or as foolish. And God chose them to put me to shame, to put my ideologies to shame, to put my feelings to shame, the things that I thought that I knew of who God was to shame. And so I love that God chose my son, who other my people might see as weak, to put me to shame, to show me who God really is.
Come on, somebody. I love this so much. I'm so excited I have you. Like, I'm just like, girl, just take over. Like, just keep talking. Just keep going. I love that, sis. Thank you for sharing that. That's beautiful. And it's so true. Like people view our children as because there's such a vulnerable population, right? That we look at them like the least of these, right? And the Bible talks about this. So to look at our children and to think how vulnerable they are and how scary it can be to just freely leave them, it, it's so much anxiety that comes with it. Like it's not even like I don't even like to say like a medical like anxiety. It's just a different type of anxious. You know what I'm saying? Like to allow that anxiety to come to us. It's not that we're just allowing it. You know, it's something that literally comes with parenting a child that has more challenges than that of a typical child. Like, and people don't get that unless you're walking this walk. Then of course you get it. But if you're listening and you're an aunt, you're an uncle, you're a grandmama, grandpa, like, I'm sorry, but like you're not going to understand it 100%. And I don't think we expect you to. I think it's just you trying. It's key, and it's a beautiful thing. Um, so I know you share some scriptures now, but like, what scriptures have provided you the most comfort and strength as an autism mom since you've received the diagnosis? What are some scriptures that have just like hit you different from what they used to hit you before?
Oh yeah.
Now it's like, whoa, okay, now I view this verse different because now I'm in a different stage in my life. You know how there's Bible verses that
Yeah.
we like read and we're like, man, like I know for me, trust in the Lord with all your heart and lean not on your own understanding. Like I can literally testify to that because that's literally my everyday life. Like I'm literally legit, okay? I don't even know what that is. But anyways, I'm literally trusting the Lord every single day.
Yep. Yep. And yep. There's no
I don't even know how to explain it. Like I'm just
this
I'm just out here trusting God.
exactly. That's all we can do. So I'm gonna give you
So,
guys two
yeah.
two Bible verses. The first one, when I started on this walk, and like I was really getting into the nitty gritty, the IEPs, the diagnosis, the testing, all of the things, and trying to get him resources and help, was my grace is sufficient. My grace is sufficient. And I didn't like that. I was really mad at God about that. I'm like, what do you mean your grace is sufficient? And he said, maybe I don't want you, I can quiet the storms, but maybe I don't want to quiet the storm, which my son, the storm was my son at that moment. He's like, but I need to quiet the storm within you. Because when I quiet the
Mm,
storm within you, then I can elevate you. You can
come
fly up
on.
higher and you can see where the storm is forming, and I can lead you and navigate you and guide you to a better place to get the help and the resources that you need. But when you're stuck in the storm, you have a storm and he has a storm. The storms are colliding and they're creating chaos. He's like, my grace is sufficient. My grace is sufficient for you at this moment. My grace is sufficient. So I'm going to need you to calm down because you're mature enough
Mm,
spiritually to understand that there is something deeper here. So I'm going to need you to calm down. So he had to calm me down. And he's like, and I'm not going to take away the storm. You're going to have to go through it because together it's a journey. I need you to get to the other side. I'm not going to take it away from you. You need to get to the other side, but you're going to have to go through the storm. And by going through the storm, you're going to have to trust me. You're going to have to trust me that I'm guiding you correctly in the right direction. He just went there with me. He snatched my edges, pulled my wig. He did everything. And I had to get it
oh
together. I had to get it together. Because the
my.
thing is
Wow.
that most of us, we want that fairy tale life. We want everything easy. But there is a beauty. There is a beauty in our struggles. There is something now that I can share. There's a depth within me that I can share with other women who might be struggling that I didn't have before. There is
Mm,
this compassion, this understanding, Nani, that you gave to me when I was in my weakness, when I was first going through my son's diagnosis, that other women couldn't offer. The women in New York were able to offer it because they were special needs moms. You're able to offer me because you have a son with autism and a daughter with autism. You were able to do that. But not everybody has that level of suffering, of understanding, of
Wow.
compassion. So there's something to it. When you are able to walk through storms, can't nobody tear you down, because you like, no, I know who I'm holding on to. My foundation is built on the rock. Yup,
Okay.
everything looks crazy to you. Everything looks crazy to you, but I know who is guiding my life.
Yeah.
I know who's leading me.
Yeah.
And I know who's with me on the boat. God, Jesus ain't sleeping. He's not sleeping. Jesus is not sleeping.
My God.
He's not sleeping. He's with me. He's
Look,
guiding me.
he took his little nap.
Yup.
Okay? But let me tell you, he knew what was going on.
Exactly. He took a nap, and it was like literally telling us, you can rest in me. I'm resting. You can rest.
Yeah.
And sometimes as special needs moms, we don't know how to rest because we're so worried. We surrender to worry. And Jesus is like, leave. You gotta like take it easy. I got you. I got you. I have never left you or abandoned you.
Wait, you just said something. We surrender to worry.
We surrender to worry.
What? That is so true. Girl, I can't. Because, look, me and Ruthie will start preaching and we would not end, y'all. Okay? So, like, we got to be remembering that we're doing an episode and not like a whole service.
And I'm literally trying, I'm holding myself back. I have a...
No. But I love this. I love that you're sharing that, because I feel like, it's speaking to me, how many times I have surrendered to my worries. I have surrendered to my fear. I have surrendered to my anxieties, and just really believe that this is how life is going to be forever. And I need to be reminded, and we need to be reminded, that this life is temporary. For those of us that are born again Christians, that are believers, this life is temporary. There's going to come a time very, very soon that the King of Kings is going to walk through those doors. He's going to open the floodgates of heaven, and he's going to come back for his church. And we're going to be made perfect once we're up there. I heard a podcast, and I need to share this podcast with you. I'm not sure if you follow her, Megan Ashley. She's friends with Jackie Perry.
Okay.
The preacher. Okay. They're like best friends, but she has a podcast called In Totality, and I listen to her once in a while, and she made an episode with Jackie Perry and her husband talking about special needs. Because Megan has a child who's autistic and has Fragile Syndrome X, something like that. I'm saying it wrong. But anyways, I'm going to send it to you. And she says something. She said, we don't know how to deal with suffering. And that touched me, because I said, that is so true. We don't think about it that way, but we really don't.
Yes.
We really don't. And this is the thing. We're going to suffer while we're here. But when we get up there, honey, that is the hope that we have, that all of this that we're dealing with, everything that's suffering, that we're suffering with right now in this time and age, would not be up there. Like, we're no longer going to suffer. We're no longer going to see our children struggling. We're no longer going to see them, having challenges. We're going to be made perfect.
Exactly.
But while we're here, we are going to struggle. And it's like you say, so we can fix our eyes on him. And through the struggle, he's going to guide us. It doesn't mean it's going to go away.
Exactly.
It does not mean it's going to go away. He is going to guide us every step of the way. So I love that you mentioned that, because it is so, so true. Now, talking about struggles, have there been times when you struggled to trust God with your child's future? Listen, I know we can all talk about this, right? And how did you work through that?
Okay. That's a really great question, because as I was preparing for the podcast, I was looking at my journal notes, and back in May, I had to take out my son out of public school, out of the school that he was in, because he wasn't learning. He was crying a lot. I don't know what was going on in that classroom, but he hated it. He would give me major behavioral issues, tantrums like crazy in the morning, latching on to me, wouldn't let me go, just crying, like almost like, please, mom, don't. And then I was like, something ain't right. but I didn't know what it was. And so I took him out. And I was looking for another school for him. In the meantime, I was like, I might have to homeschool him. And within that process, my son started acting up. So I didn't have a break. I feel like I didn't have a break because when he was in public school, he was only there for 2 hours. So I was dropping off my son, I was dropping off my daughter at work, and then I was coming home for like maybe 20 minutes to drink some coffee, and then I was back to picking him up, and I was dealing with all of his behavioral issues throughout the day. So I felt really exhausted and overwhelmed. Plus, he wasn't sleeping at night. So that day in my journal, I wrote, God, I said, God, I can't do this. I know you said this is not a punishment, blah, blah, blah. But I'm like, I feel so overwhelmed. I feel so exhausted. I feel like I can't do this anymore. And I don't know what to do. I know you gave me this child, and I want to treat your child with excellence because you handed him over to me. You chose me to be his mom. Help me, guide me, give me the wisdom. What am I doing wrong? Give me the resources, Lord. I literally need you to hold me by the hand and to guide me because I don't know what else to do. I don't know what else to do. I looked at the next page of my journal entry from back then, and the next day I was like, thank you, Jesus, because you heard my prayers and I got the phone calls and the resources. And so, like, the Lord heard me in the midst of my suffering, in the midst of everything that I was going through. I had a lot of overwhelming moments, but God always came through. God always came through. God always came through. There were many moments of that, but that one in particular, like, I'm glad that I wrote it down and I continue to write it down because I can see the progress from May to where my son is at now. And it's not like, oh my God, he can talk now and he's eating and he's doing all of these things because he needs all types of therapies. But I can see the hand of God in his life, and I can see how God has answered me and how he has given me relief in the midst of.
Yes, that part. But wait, because I need to revisit that. It's something that I've been talking about with the mom's ministry that I know
Yeah,
you're part
yeah,
of. We've been talking about this month God's faithfulness and God's faithfulness in trials. This Friday we spoke about God's faithfulness in weakness. When we're weak,
he's strong.
when we have these
Come
struggles
on.
that we're facing and we just don't know what to do. And so I encourage the moms to journal these moments, journal those moments of faithfulness that God has really come through, right? And we know that he's faithful at all times, but like those big moments that we know we have been waiting for his faithfulness to just show through and come by, right? And now you can revisit that and you can testify
Yes.
and say like I've really seen God's faithfulness. Cuz listen, even if it's been a year that I've had to wait for God's faithfulness to show up, listen, honey, it happened. And I can testify and I have evidence on my notebook. I've known of people that have had evidence for years.
Yes.
And they'll go back and they're like, I've had these notes since 2000 and something. And I'm like, what? It inspires me, and we don't appreciate the part of journaling, right? Some people are so against it. No, just bring it to the Lord. But what if writing is the way that I like express myself to the Lord? I love writing.
Me too.
Unfortunately, my hands, ever since I had my daughter and I was pregnant with her, I got carpal tunnel. So I've noticed throughout the years it has affected me. So I can't hold the pencil for too long or a pen. And it's frustrating. So I'll just type, I'll type on my laptop, put it on my Google Doc or on my phone, and just remembering those special moments. Because he's so faithful,
Yes.
sis. And I know that you've been through so much. You've had so many other struggles aside from a diagnosis and your child's journey.
Mm-hmm.
Um, so I know without a doubt that this was somewhat of a breeze for you, right? It was still a struggle
Mm-hmm.
and it was still hard, but I know you were able to get through it much different than you have with different
And
struggles.
can I say something? One of the things that sometimes we think that God is going to come through by like a lightning bulb, or someone's going to just knock on your door and be like, boom, here's the answer. Like, he's going to like, no. And the way that he guided me was like, I would open my Instagram page and boom, I would see you post something, or I would see someone else post
Yeah.
something. And it would remind me of God's faithfulness. And it would remind me
Mm.
that my son can make progress. Or when you did your podcast on behavior or on speech therapists and things like that, I would like soak it in, and it was like a resource. Like, and his word through prayer, through going through church, I met like just so many different things. God gave me so many different resources to get through, not around it,
Mm,
to get through my storms, to get through those difficult
wow.
moments. And he gave me those resources, and I just started like, okay, I have this and this in my hand. I'm gonna start using it, and through that, I began to like be able to deal with my son's meltdowns. When you did an episode on meltdowns, I was able to navigate that better while I was waiting for him to begin his ABA therapy. I was able to navigate that, and the eloping and
Mm,
the feeding therapies and all of those things. God
wow.
provides you with resources. Now, when like
Yeah.
there's a story about a person who was drowning and God sent them a boat, God sent them a helicopter, and they didn't take it because they was like, no, that's
Right.
not how I want you to save me. And that's what I was saying before in the beginning, that God had to strip me from my ideology of who he was, because it was preventing me from seeing what God was doing right in front of me, or the resources that he was trying to provide me with.
Wow. And I think, sis, God has really been faithful to you. And this is just rewards to you of your faithfulness to him. And you've been faithful in the little, and now he's being faithful to you in the much, right? And not that he's never been faithful, that he won't be faithful because we're unfaithful, right? That's not what I'm trying to say. But what I'm saying is that knowing you and these past few years that I've known you, and even though most of our relationship, of course, has been virtual, but it's crazy because it always feels like I've known you for years.
Yeah,
And I just love it. And we're so different in age too,
I
which is
know.
crazy, and personality as well. I know you're more introverted than me, but like, I mean, we balance each other out well,
Yes.
right?
Yeah.
My husband is an introvert, so it's easy for me to deal with the introverts.
Yes.
Um, but like, you've been faithful to the Lord, and he hears the prayers of the righteous. He
Mm-hmm.
hears us. Like, he's literally a faithful and such a good God, that if you have not experienced God for yourself, if you have not had an encounter, you're just going based on religion and
Mm-hmm.
what others are telling you. I really want to use this opportunity to tell you that, listen, give Jesus a try.
Yes.
Like, I may sound crazy to some of you, but like, give Jesus a try and really surrender to him.
Come on.
Read the word, find a Bible that you can understand and relate to, and like literally read it, soak it, absorb it, get the context out of that verse, and you're going to see how God is going to show up in your life, ladies and dads, whoever's listening, because you just never know. You never know. And you may be wondering why Ruthie and I have gotten through this journey, why we are able to get through this journey really on a daily basis. It's him. He's the only one that can sustain us. People think I'm crazy. I'm not taking no monster drink or anything. I don't even buy soda in this house. No, I'm literally powered by water. I don't even drink coffee. So it's like, what? No, I'm not on medication. No, like literally, this is by the strength of God. It's a supernatural strength, sis, that can only come from him. It's a supernatural peace that can only come from him. So I love that. And I know when you mentioned that Isaiah was having like all these behaviors, he was trying to tell you something
Yes.
and you weren't really understanding at the
And
moment,
understand.
right? Because you were still
Yeah.
learning and still learning.
Yes.
To be honest, I'm still learning and I've been at this for a while. It's still a learning thing, the spectrum is huge.
Mm-hmm.
And as they get older, behavior changes. But I thought about, and I took note here really quick, which is behavior is communication.
Yes. Yes.
Like, and we see this a lot, right?
Yeah.
In the community, behavior is communication. So our children, literally, they're not bad.
Mm-hmm.
They're not, terrible children. Like some schools and some people may look at our children as they are. No, they're literally trying to communicate something, especially if they're non-speaking, non-verbal, however you want to word it, and they can't communicate verbally. Even if they have a device and they're still learning that device, you know how much you have to learn from a device? Like, you're trying to put your words together. You're trying to put your brain together on a device. Like, that's a lot.
It's a lot. Like, I can't even imagine not being able to speak. Like, how frustrating it would be to say, hey, I want
Exactly.
this, and no one understands.
Exactly. And sometimes we're so quick to say, and I've done this, to my kids. I'm like, oh, they're just acting up. Like, you need to stop. Get yourself together. Because I'm so consumed with life and with other things that I'm not realizing. No, they're really trying to tell me something. So I know my mom was watching Jacob today, well, both of them. But Jacob was downstairs with her and she's like, "Oh my God, like he pinched me, like he tried hitting me." But she was like laughing and I was like, "Well, don't laugh at his behavior. First of all, he's clearly upset that you're not following his lead, right? And he wants to go outside." She's like, "No, but I don't want to leave him by himself." As a mom, but he's literally used to me just letting him go outside. The gate is locked. There's no way his little self is going to open the gate. Literally. He's not. It's completely locked. He knows when he's ready to come back inside, he'll like stand on the screen door. Literally, this is his routine every day. So he was frustrated because he knows, that mom lets me go. So somebody's here not listening to my behavior, to my way of communicating something.
Mm.
And I just thought it was so funny because she's like, "He pinched me." And she's like cracking up. I was like, "Well, like it's funny now, mom, but like I don't want him pitching forever."
Yeah.
Because it's not cute. But you know what I'm saying? Like behavior is communication. So
Yeah,
Isaiah, this whole time, he's been trying,
yes. Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
I know you wanted to say
No,
something.
I said Jacob had to communicate it some way, somehow. Like, hey, listen to me. Oh,
Right?
God.
Like, girl.
Like, so yeah.
Exactly. So, sis, last question is what advice would you give to other Christian moms, or really any mom that's listening, of autistic children who are struggling to trust God through their journey?
Hey, ooh, that is so deep. Two things. One, you can flourish in the midst of your pain. You can flourish in the midst of your pain. I know that society will have you think that when you're in pain or that when you're in suffering, that there's nothing that you can do about it. You just have to, like, you're dragging yourself and just you're barely making it. You're barely being able to function, but that's a lie. And I just want to let you know that's a lie. You can still flourish in the midst of your pain. And I can give you biblical backgrounds, but I'm not. Because I want you to meditate on that. Whether you believe in Jesus or not, I want you to meditate on that. You can flourish in the midst of your pain. You can continue to educate yourself and receive resources in the midst of your grief. You can still do things for your child. You can still help them to progress in the midst of your pain. Because I know a lot of us, it's still hard for us to still accept this, that the diagnosis, but you can still flourish and you can still help your child flourish in the midst of your pain. And then the other thing that I wanted to say is Psalms 139, 13, 14. And this was beautiful because this has been something that the Lord has been reminding me in these past few days. And it's, "For you formed my inward parts. You knitted me together in my mother's wombs. I praise you, for I am fearfully and wonderfully made. Wonderful are your works. My soul knows it very well." And the part that got me was fearfully. And I looked up the word in Hebrew, and it means deep respect, heartfelt interest, and great reverence. So to me, my understanding is that God knit me. He made my child fearfully, okay, with deep respect, with heartfelt interest, and with great reverence. So don't ever feel like your child was a mistake, or there's something wrong with them, because that's not what the Bible tells me. This tells me that God created him with deep respect, with great interest, and with deep reverence. You know how deep and profound that is? God took his time to create each and every one of our children. And that's it. I just wanted you to just want to leave you with that.
Oh, I can't. Like, what? Sis, you came ready, okay? And I love this. I love this. Wow. Well, thank you so much for that. I'm not even going to share anything else because I just want the listeners to soak that in. I really appreciate you being here and just taking out of your time. So thank you again. And you guys, I will see you again on another episode of the Uniquely Wired podcast. And that's a wrap for today's episode of Uniquely Wired podcast. Thank you so much for tuning in and sharing this space with me. If you enjoyed this episode, don't forget to subscribe, rate, and share. Until next time.